What would you do if some pencil-pushing HOA tyrant slapped you with a $250,000 bill for land your family's owned since Reagan was in office, then threatened to snatch your property like it's a Black Friday deal? That's the exact crap sandwich I got served when I inherited my granddad's ranch, Twin Cedars, only to find out the neighboring HOA, led by a power-tripping Karen with a clipboard and a vendetta, had been playing fast and loose with boundary lines behind my back. I'm Jake, mid-40s, just a guy trying to keep my granddad's legacy alive in Willow Creek Hills, where our family's been ranching for 3 generations. Twin Cedars isn't just dirt and cedar trees, it's where I learned to shoot, fish, and cuss properly. Granddad passed a few months back, and I'd barely hung my hat on the old oak peg when I rolled up to the barn and saw it, a fancy pants notice, duct taped like a middle finger, flapping in the breeze. From Karen, HOA president. Of course her name's Karen. It demanded $250,000 in retroactive payments, or they'd seize my land faster than you can say, eminent domain. I stood there, jaw on the ground, knowing damn well Granddad fought tooth and nail to keep Twin Cedars free of any HOA's clutches. Those vultures built their McMansion utopia next door, but our ranch was never part of their gated golf cart dystopia. So why was Karen acting like she owned my back 40? I ripped the notice off and stormed into the ranch house, tossing it into a folder on the kitchen counter. That's when I started digging. In the home office, I found Granddad's original deed, crisp as the day it was notarized, tucked in his desk drawer. Storage boxes in the attic coughed up old land surveys and aerial photos, each one screaming, "This is ours." Hell, there was even a faded Polaroid on the wall, Granddad in his Stetson, planting a boundary post in '82, looking like he'd punch any surveyor who dared cross him. This wasn't just a shakedown, it was personal. Karen and her HOA goons thought they could bully me out of my birthright with a strongly worded letter and some legal mumbo-jumbo. Big mistake. I was about to make her regret ever picking up that duct tape. So, fellas, ever had an HOA or some suit try to claim what's yours? What would you do if they came for your land with a $250,000 ransom note? Drop your war stories in the comments. I know you've got 'em. Stick around, because when I hit the county courthouse to check those property lines, I found something that'd make your blood boil. Those HOA bastards have been redrawing maps like they're playing Risk with my ranch. Karen thought changing a few lines on a map would be enough to steal my land. She didn't realize she'd just poked a hornet's nest with a family legacy of fighting for what's ours. That smug notice taped to my barn door wasn't just a demand for $250,000, it was a declaration of war. I wasn't about to let some HOA dictator redraw my granddad's ranch into her suburban empire. First stop was the county courthouse, a squat brick building that smelled like old coffee and bureaucracy. I marched to the records office, the duct-taped notice burning a hole in my pocket. The clerk, a guy with a comb-over and a mustard stain on his tie, pulled up the zoning maps on a computer that probably still ran Windows XP. When he turned the screen toward me, my gut dropped. The map, updated 3 months ago, showed Twin Cedars swallowed whole by the HOA's jurisdiction, like my ranch was just another cul-de-sac of cookie-cutter mansions. I snapped photos of the screen with my phone, each click fueling my rage. Granddad's deed, safe in my truck, said otherwise. Someone had tampered with the records, and I'd bet my left boot Karen's manicured claws were all over it. Back at the ranch, I spread the evidence across the kitchen table, deed, old surveys, aerial photos from the '80s showing our boundary posts clear as day. The Polaroid of Granddad planting that post in '82 stared down from the wall, daring me to let him down. I was neck-deep in documents when my Uncle Ray rolled up in his beat-up F-150. Ray's a retired attorney, the kind of guy who'd argue with a fence post and win. He took one look at the mess on the table and said, "Boy, you've got a fight on your hands. We need more than nostalgia to bury this Karen." Ray's right. Sentiment doesn't win in court, evidence does. We split the work. I headed to the attic, where Granddad's old journals were buried under decades of dust and mouse droppings. After an hour of sneezing, I found one from 1995, its leather cover cracked but intact. Pages detailed disputes with the original developers of the land next door, before the HOA even existed. Granddad wrote about slimy suits trying to nudge his boundaries, complete with sketches of the original survey markers. One entry read, "Told M I'd rather burn the ranch than let M steal an inch." They backed off. I grinned. That's my blood. Meanwhile, Ray scouted the property for those markers. Most were still there, half buried under weeds but stubborn as Granddad himself. He called me out to the northwest corner, where a rusted iron pin marked the true boundary, 50 feet from where the HOA's fancy stone wall now stood. I pulled up satellite imagery on my laptop, zooming in on the wall's footprint. Sure enough, it crept onto my land like a slow-motion invasion. The HOA hadn't just redrawn maps, they'd built on my property without so much as a handshake. Ray leaned over my shoulder, squinting at the screen. "This ain't incompetence, Jake. This is deliberate. Someone greased palms at the county to push that map change through." He tapped the journal. "Your granddad fought this fight before. Now it's your turn. We need to trace who altered those records and why." That night, we sat on the porch, sipping Granddad's favorite bourbon and plotting. Ray suggested public records requests to dig into the county's zoning updates. "Look for names, dates, approvals," he said. "If Karen's behind this, she'll have left a trail." I nodded, but my mind was already racing ahead. The HOA's annual meeting was 2 weeks away. Karen would be there, lording over her kingdom of nosy neighbors and manicured lawns. If I could find hard proof of her scheme, I'd crash that meeting and shove her own bylaws down her throat. I spent the next few days playing detective. The county's online portal was a maze of dead links and cryptic forms, but I filed requests for every document tied to the zoning change. Responses trickled in, emails, memos, approval stamps. One name kept popping up, Karen Mitchell, HOA president, listed as a consultant on the map revision. Consultant, my ass. She'd orchestrated this heist, probably banking on me being too grief-stricken or broke to fight back. Ray called in a favor with an old surveyor buddy, who confirmed the original boundary markers matched Granddad's deed to the inch. He emailed me a report, complete with GPS coordinates and photos of the pins. I saved it to my laptop, alongside the satellite shots and journal scans. The evidence was piling up, but I needed more, a smoking gun to nail Karen to the wall. Then I found it. Tucked in another attic box was a letter from 2001, when the HOA first formed. Granddad had written to the county, explicitly refusing to join their jurisdiction. The letter was CC'd to the HOA's founding board, with a note in Granddad's scrawl, "They tried to bully me." I sent M packing. Attached was a signed agreement from the HOA, acknowledging Twin Cedars' independence. Karen either didn't know about this, or thought she could bury it. I showed Ray the letter, and he let out a low whistle. "This is gold, Jake. They can't claim your land if they agreed it's not theirs. We've got her." He clapped my shoulder. "Get ready for that HOA meeting. You're about to walk into the lion's den with a flamethrower." As I packed the evidence, photos, journal, letter, surveyor's report, I felt Granddad's ghost nodding from that Polaroid. Karen thought she could outsmart a rancher with a fancy letter and a rigged map. She didn't count on me digging through history or Ray's legal know-how. The HOA meeting was her turf, but I was bringing a century's worth of proof and a chip on my shoulder the size of Texas. She'd rue the day she taped that notice to my barn. Karen thought she could intimidate me with legal threats and a duct-taped notice. She didn't expect I'd show up at her precious HOA meeting with a century's worth of evidence and a team ready to blow her scheme wide open. The clubhouse was her throne room, but I was about to turn it into a courtroom. I pulled into the HOA's gated compound, Ray in the passenger seat and Tom, a grizzled surveyor buddy of Ray's, in the back. The clubhouse loomed ahead, all glass and fake stone, like a community center trying too hard to be a country club. Inside, Karen presided over rows of homeowners, folks who probably just wanted to grill in peace but got suckered into her power trip. My USB drive, loaded with presentation slides, burned in my pocket. Granddad's original deed, safe in a protective sleeve, sat in Ray's briefcase alongside printed copies of the HOA bylaws Karen had conveniently ignored. Tom clutched his tablet, ready to flash recent photos of the HOA's stone wall squatting on my land. We slipped in just as Karen started her spiel about community standards and property values. Her voice dripped with that fake sweet tone reserved for car salesmen and con artists. I caught her eye, and her smile faltered, just for a second. Then she doubled down, calling me out like I was a kid caught sneaking cookies. "Mr. Larson, this is a private meeting. I'm afraid you'll have to leave." I stood, slow and deliberate, feeling every eye in the room. "I'm here to discuss the $250,000 you're trying to extort from me, Karen. And the fact that your HOA's been building on my land." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Karen's face went from smug to sour, like she'd bitten a lemon. She banged her gavel, actually banged it, and snapped, "You're out of order. Security." Ray was on his feet before she finished. "Under your own bylaws, Article 7, Section 3, any resident impacted by HOA actions has a right to address this board." He slid a printed copy across the table. "You can't silence him, Karen. Not legally." The room buzzed. A guy in a polo shirt whispered to his wife, "What's he talking about?" Karen's security goon, a rent-a-cop who looked more bored than threatening, hesitated. I seized the moment, plugging my USB into the projector. Up flashed Granddad's deed, dated 1947, clear as day. "This is Twin Cedars' title. My family's owned it for 3 generations, free of any HOA. But 3 months ago, someone," I stared at Karen, "altered county records to claim my land." I clicked to the next slide, the forged zoning map from the courthouse, side by side with an aerial photo from 1985 showing my boundary posts. Murmurs grew louder. Tom stepped up, swiping his tablet to display photos of the HOA's wall crossing my property line. "I've surveyed this land," he said, voice steady. "The original markers match the deed. Your wall's 50 feet onto Twin Cedars. So are parts of 6 homes." The crowd erupted. A woman in pearls clutched her purse, yelling, "Our house." A guy with a goatee shouted, "Karen, what the hell's going on?" Karen's composure cracked. "This is preposterous. Those records are legitimate. He's just a disgruntled outsider stirring trouble." But I was ready for that. I pulled out Granddad's 2001 letter, the one where the HOA agreed Twin Cedars was independent. I read it aloud, letting the words sink in. "The Willow Creek Hills HOA acknowledges that Twin Cedars Ranch is not, and will never be, under its jurisdiction." I held up the signed agreement, zooming in on the projector. "You can't claim what you already gave up, Karen." The room was chaos now. Homeowners were on their feet, demanding answers. One guy, red-faced, pointed at Karen. "Did you know our houses were on his land? Did you sell us bad property?" Another woman chimed in, "I paid $600,000 for my lot. Is it even mine?" Karen stammered, her gavel useless. I assure you, everything was done properly." But her voice shook, and her eyes darted to the exit. Ray leaned in, voice low so only I could hear. "She's done. Keep pushing." I clicked to my final slide, a county email from my public records request, naming Karen as the consultant who pushed the zoning change. "This wasn't an accident," I said. Karen directed the map fraud. She approved construction on my land, knowing it wasn't hers. She bet I wouldn't fight back. The crowd turned on her like wolves. A retiree in a golf shirt stood up. "I've lived here 10 years, and I'm sick of her bullying. Is this true, Karen?" She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Her hands shook as she gripped the podium. For the first time, she looked small, not a queen, just a schemer caught in her own trap. I stepped back, letting the homeowners take over. They didn't need me to spell it out anymore. Ray clapped my shoulder. "You just flipped the board, kid." Tom nodded, packing up his tablet. "They'll be eating their own for weeks." As we left, Karen was still trying to shout over the mob, her gavel forgotten. I caught her eye one last time and gave her a nod, not friendly, just a promise. This wasn't over. Back at the ranch, I spread the evidence on the kitchen table, the deed still in its sleeve. The HOA meeting had cracked Karen's armor, but she'd come out swinging in court. Her kind always did. Ray was already on the phone with a property lawyer, and Tom promised to testify about the survey markers. Granddad's journal, open to his 1995 entry about fighting developers, sat nearby. "They backed off," he'd written. I wasn't backing off. Karen had started this war, but I was going to finish it, with every scrap of proof my family had left me. Karen thought she could outmaneuver me in court with her high-dollar lawyers and a smirk that screamed, "I'm untouchable." She didn't realize I had the one thing her money couldn't buy, the truth, etched in my family's blood and documented across generations. After the HOA meeting meltdown, where I'd laid out her map-tampering scheme for all to see, she doubled down. Now, we were squaring off in the county courthouse, and I was ready to bury her under the weight of my evidence. The courtroom smelled like polished wood and desperation. Karen sat across the aisle, flanked by two attorneys who looked like they charged by the syllable. Her tailored suit and pearl earrings screamed, "I'm the victim here," but the sweat on her brow told a different story. Ray had hooked me up with Sarah, a property dispute lawyer with a reputation for chewing up HOAs like jerky. She carried a briefcase stuffed with court documents, expert witness reports, and every scrap of proof we'd gathered. I sat behind her, Granddad's deed and journal in my lap, feeling his ghost urging me to fight. Sarah opened strong, laying out the case like a general mapping a battlefield. She presented Granddad's 1947 deed, projected on a screen for the judge, a no-nonsense woman with glasses perched on her nose. "Twin Cedars Ranch has never been under HOA jurisdiction," Sarah said, her voice sharp. Yet, 3 months ago, county records were altered to claim it. She clicked to the forged zoning map, then the 2001 letter where the HOA agreed my land was independent. The judge's pen scratched notes, her face unreadable. Next came Tom, our surveyor, testifying about the boundary markers. He showed photos of the rusted pins, backed by GPS data and historical surveys from the attic. The HOA's wall and 6 homes encroach on Twin Cedars by up to 50 feet, he said, pointing to aerial photos from 1985 and recent satellite shots. Karen's lawyers tried to trip him up, tossing out jargon about adverse possession, but Tom didn't flinch. The markers matched the deed. The land's his. Then Sarah dropped the hammer, the county email naming Karen as the consultant who pushed the zoning change. Ms. Mitchell directed the map alteration, Sarah said, and approved construction on disputed land, knowing it violated the 2001 agreement. She played a recording, legally obtained from a public records request, of Karen at a county meeting, pressuring a clerk to expedite the map update. The clerk's nervous, "Yes, ma'am," echoed in the room. Karen's face went gray, her lawyers scribbling furiously. The HOA's defense was a circus of deflections. Their lead attorney, a slick guy with a $200 haircut, argued the zoning change was a clerical error, and that homeowners had relied in good faith on the new map. He waved off the 2001 letter as outdated and claimed I'd slept on my rights by not noticing the encroachment sooner. Sarah shot that down, calling up 2 old-timers from Willow Creek Hills, neighbors who'd known Granddad for decades. They testified that Twin Cedars boundaries were never in question until Karen's HOA started sniffing around. One, a grizzled rancher named Ed, glared at Karen and said, she knew damn well that land wasn't hers. Tried the same trick on my fence line in '03. The turning point came when Sarah presented expert witness reports, including a forensic analyst who traced the zoning map's digital edits to a county terminal accessed with Karen's login credentials. The analyst's dry delivery, charts and timestamps, made Karen squirm. Her lawyers objected, claiming the evidence was speculative, but the judge overruled them, her eyes narrowing. I caught Ray's grin from the gallery. We had her. Karen took the stand, and it was a masterclass in self-destruction. She dodged questions, claiming she trusted the county's process and never intended harm. Sarah didn't let her off easy, pressing her on the email, the recording, and the construction approvals. Karen's answers unraveled, stammers, contradictions, a week, I don't recall. When Sarah asked why she'd ignored the 2001 agreement, Karen snapped, that was before my time. The judge's pen stopped. Bad move, Karen. The ruling came fast. The judge's voice was steel, the evidence clearly establishes Twin Cedars Ranch as independent of the HOA. The zoning alteration was unauthorized and invalid. She confirmed my ownership of the disputed land, including the encroached portions. A murmur rippled through the room. Karen's lawyers slumped, and she stared at the floor, her empire crumbling. The judge added that the HOA faced significant liability for building on my property, setting the stage for a messy aftermath. Outside, Sarah handed me the judge's ruling, a crisp document that felt heavier than it looked. This is just the start, she warned. The HOA's got 6 homes partially on your land. They'll fight to keep them. I nodded, already thinking ahead. Those homeowners weren't my enemy, Karen was. But the HOA would have to pay, one way or another. Back at the ranch, Ray cracked open a beer and toasted Granddad's Polaroid on the wall. You did him proud, Jake. I spread the court documents on the kitchen table, next to the deed and journal. The victory was sweet, but it left a problem, those homes. Evicting families wasn't my style, but letting the HOA off scot-free wasn't either. I needed a solution that honored Granddad's legacy without turning me into the bad guy. As I stared at the aerial photos, an idea took shape. The HOA could buy the encroached land at market value, and I'd use the money to protect Twin Cedars for good. Karen's reign was over, but I wasn't done rewriting her rules. She'd tried to steal my family's heart. Now I'd make sure her HOA never forgot who owned it. Karen thought she'd be ruling the HOA like a suburban dictator for years to come. Now she's packing her bags, her tail between her legs, while I rewrite the rules of the community she tried to swindle. The courtroom victory was a knockout punch, my ownership of Twin Cedars was ironclad, and Karen's map-tampering scheme lay in ruins. But winning the land back left me with a new fight, figuring out what to do with 6 HOA homes squatting on my property. I wasn't about to become the villain in this story, but I damn sure wasn't letting the HOA skate. Back at the ranch, I sat on the porch, Granddad's journal open to his 1995 entry about outlasting greedy developers. The judge's ruling, tucked in my pocket, felt like his final nod of approval. Ray was inside, sipping bourbon and brainstorming with Sarah, our lawyer, who'd already drafted a proposal for the HOA. The plan was simple but bold, let the homeowners keep their houses, but make the HOA pay fair market value for the encroached land, rewrite their bylaws to prevent future boundary grabs, and force Karen out for good. It was justice with a side of mercy, Granddad style. I walked the property line, past the rusted survey markers Tom had used to crush Karen's case. The HOA's stone wall, still creeping 50 feet onto my land, mocked her defeat. I snapped a photo for the community meeting I'd called, where I'd lay out my terms. The homeowners weren't my enemies, most were just folks caught in Karen's web, duped into buying disputed lots. But the HOA board, with its deep pockets and deeper arrogance, was about to learn a lesson in accountability. The meeting was held at the clubhouse, the same place where I'd ambushed Karen weeks earlier. The room was packed, tension thick as engine grease. Homeowners whispered, eyeing me like I might bulldoze their backyards. Karen was absent, already on leave from the board, her house listed for sale at a bargain price. I stepped to the podium, Ray and Sarah at my side, and laid out the deal. "I'm not here to evict anyone," I said, projecting the photo of the wall. "But this land is mine, confirmed by the court. The HOA will pay $300,000 for the encroached parcels, market rate, verified by appraisers. You'll keep your homes, and I'll keep Twin Cedars." Murmurs turned to nods. A guy in a flannel shirt raised his hand. "What about the HOA's rules? Can they pull this again?" I slid a stack of revised bylaws across the table, printed fresh from Sarah's office. "These ensure transparency," I said. "No map changes without public notice. No construction without owner consent. And the board answers to you, not itself." The crowd liked that. A woman in the back clapped, then others joined. They'd had enough of Karen's reign. The final demand was the kicker. "Karen Mitchell resigns permanently," I said. "She faces charges for document tampering and fraud, and she's done here." No one argued. The board, now led by a nervous interim president, agreed to vote on the terms. 2 days later, they signed, $300,000 wired to my account, bylaws adopted, Karen ousted. Word spread she'd sold her McMansion at a loss and slunk out of Willow Creek Hills, her reputation as shredded as her fake zoning maps. I used the settlement to honor Granddad's legacy. Half went to restoring Twin Cedars, new fences, a fresh coat of paint on the barn, and a rebuilt porch where I could almost hear his stories again. The other half funded a conservation easement, locking the ranch's core acres away from developers forever. No HOA, no schemer, no one would touch it again. I framed the easement papers next to Granddad's Polaroid, the one of him planting that boundary post in '82. His grin said it all, we'd won. The community changed, too. The new HOA board, prodded by homeowners who tasted betrayal, started acting like actual neighbors. They even invited me to a barbecue, awkward, but I went, mostly for the brisket. Folks apologized for Karen, shared their own horror stories of her meddling. The guy in flannel, now a board member, shook my hand. "You didn't just save your land," he said. "You saved us from more of her." I shrugged, but it felt good. Karen's downfall was the cherry on top. The county DA filed charges, forgery, fraud, the works. Last I heard, she was cutting plea deals and dodging reporters. Her name became a local punchline, the kind of cautionary tale told over beers at the VFW. I didn't need to gloat, her own greed had done the job. As I sat on the restored porch, Granddad's journal in hand, I realized the fight wasn't just about land. It was about roots, about standing for something bigger than a dollar sign. Twin Cedars was safe, the community was better, and I'd turned Karen's power grab into a legacy of fairness. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just winning, it's building something stronger from the ashes of injustice. So, guys, if you like this tale of HOA karma, smash that like button and share it with buddies who've tangled with property sharks. Subscribe for more stories of sticking it to the suits, and ring that bell to stay in the fight. Ever had to defend what's yours from a bully with a briefcase? Drop your battles in the comments, I'm all ears. Let's keep the fire burning for the underdogs who fight back.